Welcome back, everybody. This week we have a familiar guest with us. Everybody, welcome the great and powerful Cullen Bunn on the
Hey,
show, Colin.
thank you. Thanks for having me. Great and powerful. I like
Yeah. Powerful in the sense that you just the amount of work you put out is phenomenal, man. It's like, and it's all quality stuff. So I don't know how you do it, but it's awesome, and we love having you on the show. So thanks for being back.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
So we got so much to talk about. You got a lot of stuff coming out. Chris and I have been reading your stuff nonstop. So let's just talk about Eden really quick, because that's something I read recently in the last couple weeks. And that's, I mean, for listeners, viewers, if you don't know Cullen by now, go look up his work. But Eden was just a one shot, right? So that was just a one-off story for you.
Yeah. Our Aftershock started this project. They call it One Shocks, where they're just like 48 page or 44 page, whatever, 40 plus page, slightly oversized magazine size, one shot comics.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the first two of those for them. One was called Piecemeal, and then that came out a few months ago, and then this one was Eden, which just came out. And yeah, it's just they're just one shot stories.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think all of them that Aftershock's going to publish will be horror stories, but at least mine obviously are. So
that whole book was like, I don't think I was really prepared for the twist at the end, because it's like you paint this world of like, oh, the creatures coming to life. This is kind of like fairy tale, and then it's like it gets really morbid at the end.
Yeah,
like, oh my god.
It's a mean little story. It starts out it's sort of a almost like a romance, sort of a fantasy romance story,
right,
in a lot of ways. And then it goes down it goes to some very dark places, and it's awesome because I've gotten so many messages and emails from people that are just like, what the hell? What in the world? Why would you do that? Why would you end that story in that way? Which is exactly what I wanted. That's how I wanted that to go. So that was fun. It's fun to see that reaction coming from the book.
And I think you kind of hold enough back to like you're kind of building this story and this like world or like powers or whatever it is, some type of like tether to nature or like the forest or whatever type of powers this girl has, but then you don't tell us anything at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how you did that.
It's one of those stories. I feel like everything you need to know is there.
Right.
But I'm not going to. I don't hold anybody's hand, and honestly, I much prefer that in just about everything I work on. I would rather leave enough that you have to figure some things out on your own. I feel like it's more immersive because I don't know if you've realized it or not, but this world is confusing as hell. I don't understand anything that goes on anytime, any day. It's all a mess, and none of it makes sense. And to me, to do that in a story where there are things that are left unanswered, things you have to figure out on your own, it feels more realistic to me than... I've worked on projects where I feel like I've over-explained, and I feel like if you explain too much, you kind of take the magic out of it.
Right.
When you think of superhero comics, look, I love superhero books, and I love them. The official handbook of the Marvel Universe and the Who's Who and everything. But there comes a point where they may go a little too far in the explanations, and you're like, "Oh, okay, I'm out now. I've checked out now."
Yeah,
because
too much.
You just explained it too much to me. Yeah, I like leaving something for the reader to think about and wonder about, fill in the blanks. Sometimes the reader will come up with far worse things than I'll ever come up with for them.
Mm-hmm. And I think that probably adds a little more because I mean, one of the common themes you've been writing for a while now is the horror theme, and I think that adds something to it, right? Not the mystery or the lack of knowledge, or you have to come up with your own explanation for this happening, right?
Yeah, I feel like that serves the horror genre well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, without a doubt, for sure.
And that's kind of a good spin-off into your recent Kickstarter project, Beyond Mortal. Ended, what, like a few weeks back?
Yeah, like maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a horror superhero story that you're publishing here soon.
Yeah, it's absolutely we're I'm doing the book with Danny Lucker, who did a book with me called Regression at Image, and we're basically Danny and I are creating a superhero universe, but we're also creating sort of this pantheon of elder gods that are going to be slipping into this universe, and so it's a story of superheroes facing this unspeakable, unstoppable horror, and we dive right into it. I mean, it's not a but we don't waste a lot of time setting up the world. You if you've ever read a superhero book, you can figure that part out pretty
Yeah.
quickly,
Right.
and figure out where these what these characters are about. But we're throwing these characters into a nasty situation, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's a gorgeous book because Danny is such a talented artist, but we're gonna my hope is that people like this enough that we can continue to tell stories in like the Beyond Mortal universe and in that kind of vein for some time to come.
Yeah, and I think the last time we talked, you were wrapping up Metro, and since then you've been doing more and more Kickstarter stuff. How has that experience been for you?
It's been interesting. I feel like every time you do a Kickstarter, you learn something new and you make different mistakes. So I want to say I feel like I'm starting to get my feet under me. Um, it's a different side of the creative process. It's really digging into because there is no some people hire editors and things like that to run the comic and make sure all the pieces get where they're fit where they're supposed to, and all the trains get to their destination on time, but that all falls to the people who run the Kickstarter in my case, and that also means all the printing elements have to be we have to handle all that. We have to set it up for the printer, and we have to deal with the design of the book, and so all and the fulfillment and everything else. It's just you definitely get to see every side of how a comic is put together and brought out, which I like. For the most part, there are days that it's more harrowing than others, but yeah, it's something I'll probably continue to do. I'll probably have at least 2 or 3 Kickstarters a year, as long as I can get the material, as long as the material comes together. With Beyond Mortal, the book was done. The first issue, what we kickstarted, was done before we ever launched the Kickstarter, and I like that. I like having the book ready to go so that we can deliver it very quickly. But yeah, it's a different side of things, but I like it for sure.
Do you see these books just staying on Kickstarter, or do you want to do more with them after they hit their audience from Kickstarter? Like maybe go to a Aftershock or somebody else to reprint them?
I could see going to a publisher and having a publisher put it out like the collected editions, or do new editions of the book, or continuing those stories, under a different publishing umbrella or whatever. I can see that. I do think whatever we put out on Kickstarter, we're not obviously going to reprint that version. It's not going to be it's not just another printing of that. It would be, we'd have to do, new covers and new material and things like that, or just do it as collected editions. Because the one thing I think is cool about Kickstarter, for me, because I back a lot of Kickstarters myself, is I'm getting something I can't necessarily get anywhere else. And I dig that. I dig that sense of sort of, I guess it's a collectability mentality or something like that. Because in most cases, you're not talking of a print run you talk about low print run books. These are short print runs. So the first edition of Beyond Mortal, I haven't looked at the numbers yet, but it's not going to be like a 30,000 print run of this book. We're talking less than 1,000 probably print run of this book. The variant covers, there'll be less than 100 of some of those variant covers. So they're very, it's very much a collectible. That archive edition is that artifact edition is something I like from the Kickstarters I support, and I like that aspect of it for for me. And these are books. I was thinking the other day about conventions and if conventions ever come back, right?
Right, yeah.
When I start going back to conventions again, whenever that is, I'm not going to be. It used to be, I'd bring boxes and boxes and boxes of books. You could get anything I'd ever written at one of my booths at a convention. We had these massive displays. Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not in the haul boxes of books around business. So something like Beyond Mortal is something I could see taking to a convention because it's something that you don't see everywhere else, and that's the kind of stuff I'll probably be bringing to a show with me from now on when the day comes that I'm coming back.
Okay. Let's talk about a little more of the published stuff, more specifically Dark Horse, because you do have a couple. One just announced recently, and then another one. But Lucky Devil, is this your first attempt at like comedic horror, I guess?
It's not my first. I've done a little bit, a few other series, but I think this one's gonna be a lot of fun. It's and when we say comedy horror, I mean you got to keep in mind this is dark comedy. It's
yeah, right.
This is a Lucky Devil. Just because there's some humor to it, it goes to some really dark places. I was just looking at art from the fourth issue, the last issue of this first run, because this book's Lucky Devil will be like a series of miniseries.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the art in issue 4, and I was like, oh my God, I remember writing this, and I was like, I don't know, can we get away with that even? There's some imagery in the book that's just awful. And even the preview pages that came out this week, I think the preview pages, 2 of them are this massive scene of slaughter and bloodshed. And it's just this horrible event that's unfolding. So there's humor in Lucky Devil, but it's definitely sort of it's a book where the humor is almost a little uncomfortable and a little strange. Lucky Devil is a story of a guy named Stanley, and he's just got a miserable life. He's got a job he hates. His wife is cheating on him. He's just never going to go anywhere, and he's never going to dig himself out of this hole. And because of his misery, that opens his spirit up to be possessed by a demon, and he gets possessed by this demon called Zedrakel, and the demon just does awful things. When it's in control. In a moment of clarity, Stanley seeks out a bargain basement exorcist. And this is the kind of guy who's like, yeah, I'll do an exorcism for you. How much money have you got in your pocket?
Yeah.
I'll do this exorcism for you. So he does an exorcism for him, and he does rid Stanley of the demon. But what happens is he leaves all of the demon's powers behind. So Stanley, this schlubby guy, suddenly has all the powers of this incredible demon lord. And what's he do with those powers? That's what the story's about. How does it change his life? How does it impact him? And it changes his life in incredible ways. But the problem he has is that the masters of hell do not approve of some human walking around with these kind of powers. They are not happy with it.
Awesome.
That sounds great.
And like you said, the preview page, I mean, there's just body parts everywhere. And like that's what I've noticed. Like a lot of your horror books that I've read, you do this, I mean, several different artists, but there's the same theme of like very disturbing imagery of like body dysmorphia or like limbs everywhere? Is that something you always try to like incorporate in these stories? Like, I just want to freak people out.
No, I don't feel like it's something I go out of my way to incorporate in the stories. Now you've got me thinking. I'm like, man, do I have some sort of deep-seated problem I need to work out? Do I need to?
I mean, it works though. It's definitely, it works with the stories for sure.
Yeah, no, I don't know that it's a goal, but I guess it comes out. I write the kind of stories I want to read, the kind of stories that interest me. So maybe I do need some help. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. This intervention has really worked out well for me.
That's what it really is.
Yeah.
So let's move over to Parasomnia.
Yeah.
What's this book coming from Dark Horse?
So Parasomnia actually comes out in just a couple of weeks, I believe.
Oh, nice.
It is the first issue does. So it's sort of a horror story, but it's also sort of a fantasy story. It's the story of it takes place in two worlds. We have one version of the story takes place in our world, very real version of our world. It's not a world where monsters and demons and ghosts and everything are around every corner. It's a real world story about a family that loses their child. Their child vanishes, and that just destroys them on every level. So one side of the story is that world, and the other world though is this very dark fantasy story about a highwayman who's searching for a lost child. It's one of these versions. One of these stories is sort of the dream world, what's going on in the dreams of the father, and the other story is what's going on in the real world and how in both worlds he's searching for his kid. Obviously the dream world is a big part of it. There's a mystery. He's sort of in the dream world. In the real world, he's completely powerless. He feels like he can do. There's nothing he can do. In the real world, he's sort of this Solomon Kane-like highwayman figure who can face any challenge and do anything to get. He's very ruthless in his quest to find this missing child. It's the story of the it's taking place in these two worlds. It's a sort of a quest for the highwayman to to find the child, and it's the different like Lucky Devil. This is sort of a series of miniseries. So each series is sort of the different adventures he's going on along the way to find this missing child.
Interesting. And the I just love the name, the Parasomnia. I just thought it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a cool name. No, but this is definitely something I'd be interested in too, as a fan of like what you've been writing. But it's got to be cool to go into the almost dreamlike world, I guess.
It started out. I really wanted to tell this story of this sort of fantasy, fantasy Solomon Kane-like story, and I just wanted to do something a little different with it. So I incorporated this, started thinking about this dream element and how lives can go in very different ways when you're dreaming and when you're awake. And the name Parasomnia is actually a disorder that's characterized by erratic and weird behaviors while you're sleeping. So this is, it's my way of being able to tell sort of this fantasy world story along with sort of a real world horror story in a lot of ways.
That's pretty awesome.
So you keep with all these books you're talking about basically doing them in what sounds like seasons, where it's like a set of mini series to tell the story throughout time.
Yeah.
Is some of the other books you've done, like one that I really loved was Rogue Planet. Are those the same way where you had them set up in seasons like that?
Well, it's different for different projects. I don't typically set things up as seasons when I'm pitching something. But with creator-owned comics these days, it's moving in that direction. Dark Horse really likes doing things in that season format. They prefer, and I've done a 30-something issue series with Dark Horse. Issue 1 through with Harrow County, it was a 32 issue series from beginning to end. But even the new Harrow County stuff we're doing, it's in 4-issue miniseries now. It's just the way Dark Horse likes to handle it. So I don't necessarily develop these stories like that. If I had my druthers, I would say let's do Parasomnia as a series that runs. It has a definitive ending. Hale Stanley has Lucky Devil. The original title for Lucky Devil was Hale Stanley. Lucky Devil has a definitive ending. But I would probably just want to do them all in one big series, but the economics of it doesn't make sense really in a lot of cases. And Dark Horse has a lot more success doing it as a series of 4 issues. There's a little bit of downtime, maybe a few months downtime, and then another series of 4 issues. They just do better with those books. So while I don't necessarily plan them that way, I always have it in the back of my mind that may be how this book is going to get released. Some books, Rogue Planet, I could do another Rogue Planet series, but I always envisioned that as a 5-issue series, and that's what it was. Eden, I came up with that as a 40 story. That's all I wanted to do. But almost everything I do, I like these stories. I enjoy telling stories in these worlds. I could go back to any of those and do another story, but that some of them are planned just to be, this is the story, and then I'm done with it.
First of all, I just gotta say, Hale Stanley's a way better name. I love that.
I like Hale Stanley. And that, like awesome. I said, that's how I pitched it. But again, it's you have to look at the. From the publisher side, they're not wrong. Lucky Devil is probably a more evocative title that's going to sell a book rather than Hale Stanley. So when it comes out, what'll happen is it'll be Lucky Devil, and then the trade will be titled Hale Stanley. So I'll get my Hale Stanley in there somewhere. But yeah, the overarching title will be Lucky Devil.
Let's talk about something coming out a little more recently or soon. Is Basilisk #1 by Boom, right?
Yes.
Next
comes out,
weekend?
I think, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I don't know when you guys are airing, but it comes out like the first week in June.
Okay, so give us a lowdown on that. Another horror series, right?
Yeah, it's. I'm really excited about this one. I think people are really gonna like it. It's a book I'm doing with an artist named Jonas Scarf. He's the artist who drew Bone Parish at Boom with me. So. This is our follow-up to Bone Parish, not a sequel, but we have some of the. It's going to be another 12-issue series, just like Bone Parish was, and it is this story on this sort of foggy morning. This group of 5 people wander down out of the mountains of Tennessee, and they wander into this town, and they slaughter everyone in the town in horrifying ways. And Basilisk is the story of a woman, Hannah, who was not in the town when this event occurred. And she's now, obviously her family was there, so it destroys her life, and she's now on this quest to get revenge on these 5 people. The thing is, Hannah's just a woman, just like anybody else. I mean, she goes through some horrible things, and it changes her, and she becomes sort of a hard ass. But these 5 people, each of them has a terrifying ability connected to one of the 5 senses. So one has awful abilities that are related to the power of touch. One has abilities that are related to the power of hearing. Each of them is connected to one of the 5 senses. And Hannah ends up coming into contact with a woman, with Reagan, who's one of the 5, who has a power that's connected to eyesight. And Hannah and Reagan become sort of strange companions on this quest of revenge against all 5 of them. And then the mystery of who these 5 people are, why they have these powers. That's part of the ongoing 12 issues. And then it's the story of how far will you go for revenge, and how revenge, the old saying, of course, is if you go seeking revenge against someone, dig 2 graves, one for the person you're after and one for yourself. It definitely deals with a lot of that. How far are you willing to go, and when you're out for revenge. So it's a story of this woman who is essentially hunting these 5 godlike figures.
That's that is interesting too. Like, because there's that movie that came out. I can't remember, or about the guy, the blind guy, and the people are trapped in the house. It's a horror movie.
Yeah, I know the movie you're talking about. Such a great actor plays that role.
Yeah, I can't think of it, but that style of horror, that deals with the senses, right? Because it's pitch black in the house, you can't see anything. That's an interesting approach too, of how it affects people.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. Coming up with how these powers of these 5 different characters manifest, because you're like, the power of smell. How's that?
Yeah.
How's that? How does that hurt somebody?
Yeah.
But these 5 characters are no joke. I mean, they are full on as terrible and as deadly as can be. So it's to me, it was fun to kind of develop those how those powers might work and how they might manifest in awful ways. There's probably some dysmorphia in there as well.
That's fine.
So we could talk about a book that I'm pretty sure doesn't have any body dysmorphia in it. And since I'm a newly minted Valiant Comics expert, let's talk about Shadow Man.
Shadow Man has the worst body dysmorphia. There's so many awful things happening in that book. But let's talk about it.
So this is your second time around doing it?
So not with Shadow Man. I've written 2 other series for Valiant. I wrote Punk Mambo and I wrote Roku, both miniseries. But this is the first ongoing with Valiant. So, and my first time writing the character. So
with a character like this who has existed before, but people may not know, how do you jump into it? And because I thought that first issue did a really good job of showing me who this character is and what his abilities are, while still telling a really cool intro story. How'd you jump into that?
Well, the first thing I did was I just decided I have no interest in telling an origin story of Shadow Man.
Yep.
And I don't think I'll ever tell that I don't have a lot of interest in telling the Shadow Man origin story. If Valiant came to me and said, "Hey, we really need to do like a Shadow Man origin mini-series," okay, I'll write that. I'll happily write that. But in the main series, I just didn't want to get into that, and I just wanted to treat it. I treat almost every issue. The old saying around comics writers is treat every issue like it's someone's first issue of a comic. So I'm really making sure I do that with this. I want every issue, if you picked it up, you could read it and understand who Shadow Man was without a lot of trouble. And you could get something out of that story without feeling like you have to read 50 other issues of a series or just feeling lost. Right. So I just approach it as I want every issue to sort of feel like a good, fun horror story that stands on its own. And I give enough information through dialogue and inner monologue and things like that so that you know what Shadow Man's deal is. At least enough that you can enjoy that story. And if you want to go back and find out more about Shadow Man, super easy to do. That's, no problem. You can find, there's plenty of opportunities to get more information on Shadow Man. But I didn't want any issue. I just approached it that I didn't want the reader to feel lost when they picked it up.
Mm-hmm. And were you a Valiant Comics guy before this, or did they offer you the job and you're like, who's Punk Mambo?
I was a little bit of a Valiant guy. When Valiant had its first, when it first appeared back in the 90s, I was working at a comic shop. So I remember when Valiant first came out, and I read everything because I read everything that came out every week. So I was reading back then, and then when Valiant resurfaced, however many, 10 years ago, whatever it was, a good friend of mine, Matt Kent, was writing a lot of their stuff. So I was reading some of it because of what he was writing, and I was getting into that. So I was familiar enough with all of the characters and the world. But they reached out to me and said, hey, Heather Antos, who was my editor on Shadow Man, reached out and said, we've wanted to do a horror book together for, forever. Why don't we do Shadow Man? So that was her calling me with that offer. And then the thing that's really appealing to me about these characters is all of the Valiant stuff I've written, they've been very supportive of me, really leaving a mark on it and kind of doing my own thing with it, and kind of making some changes and approaching it in a way that I feel is contributing something new rather than rehashing old stories.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. I know. So, do you have something coming back with Godzilla, or are you coming back to the Godzilla universe?
Man, I would love to. I would love to write more Godzilla. I have been a Godzilla fanatic since I was very young. Yeah. I had so much fun. I wrote I wrote the Godzilla miniseries Cataclysm years ago, and I had so much fun doing it. I would love to write more Godzilla. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And but nothing new is in the books right now. Okay. What's coming out is there is a collection coming out in the next couple of months. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember what the collection is called, but IDW is releasing this big omnibus of Godzilla series, and Godzilla Cataclysm is going to be one of the series in that book. But no, nothing new Godzilla wise. Okay. On the immediate future, although now I'm feeling like, man, I need to start writing some emails.
I think if I could have it my way, I'd want you to go back to Godzilla maybe, and maybe another Ash Evil Dead story. If I don't know, Halloween's coming up eventually, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, I would of everything like that. Godzilla is one I would absolutely love to write more stories with.
That's nice to hear, because those are my two big fandoms. So
now, there are Godzillas, usually within arm's reach of my desk. I could reach over here. There's a Godzilla. Over here, I've got a Batra figure sitting within arm's reach, that's amazing. So that I can always have Batra nearby. So yeah, there are 6 Godzillas over in this corner. I'm a big Godzilla fan. I've always loved him.
Yeah, Chris and I recently discovered all of them are on HBO Max. So I was marathoning them.
Are all of them? I haven't looked on HBO Max. Godzilla versus Biollante.
I don't know if that. No, you're right. I don't think that's
a tough one. That's a tough one to track down. But yeah, I love Godzilla, Gamera. I'm a big fan. I mean, as a kid I loved Godzilla, and then so I was always kind of in Godzilla. And then I remember I used to go to these toy shows in the early '90s, and there was a guy that sold bootleg movies, and he had Godzilla movies, and I'm like, what are these? He's like, oh yeah, those are the Godzilla movies that are only that have never been made available here in the States. And some of them were literally just someone sitting in a theater with a camera recording, so it's all in Japanese and you can hear the audience. But I was just like, when I discovered that there were new Godzilla movies being made, it's like I jumped into it with both feet, and I was like, "Oh, Godzilla! I'm back to loving Godzilla and Gamera, especially." I mean, I was just all in on those movies. I still don't know how. I guess bootleg VHS is no longer a thing at conventions. Back then it was interesting.
It's bootleg DVDs now.
Yeah. I gotta tell you, that's not. Look, I would be lying if I told you I didn't buy some of those bootleg VHS tapes that guy had. Yeah. Now, I also have long since gotten rid of those, and I've replaced all of those movies with actual, I had a bootleg of Godzilla versus Biollante, and as soon as Suncoast had a VHS version of it, I went and I bought that and threw the bootleg away. It was it was interesting for me, and it kind of woke me back up to what what's available, of Godzilla stories. I really at that point I had no idea there had been another Godzilla, I think Godzilla was 1985. There was that. I didn't know there were I didn't know there were. I guess at the time it would have been 91, 92. I didn't know there were 7 more years of Godzilla movies that I'd been missing.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. And I mean, hopefully you send those emails out because I definitely read another Godzilla book.
Well, now that I admitted that I bought some bootleg Godzilla movies in my youth, I doubt that anyone will ever hire me to do Godzilla.
Oh, man.
Listen, I may or may not have bought a bootleg of the Star Wars Holiday Special, which Disney I will gladly pay you for, but may or may not have done that.
Isn't that on Disney Plus now?
Yeah,
parts of it are.
Just parts.
Yeah.
The cartoon with Boba Fett is on it.
Oh well, then that's the best part. I mean, I watched it when it came out as a kid, and I haven't seen it since it aired when I was a kid.
Yep.
But
should be hidden away forever. But awesome, Cullen. Thanks again for being here. We got so much cool stuff coming from you. You'll definitely be back, I hope. And again, for our listeners and our viewers, where can we send them to follow all the stuff you're doing?
Yeah. So the easiest place to interact with me is Twitter, and my handle is @CullenBunn. I have a website, which is cullenbunn.com, and through Twitter or the website, you can get to my e-newsletter, which I put out pretty much once a week. You can get to my Discord server, where I sit around and talk with people about all sorts of nonsense, and all the other links and everything else. It's all there through those 2 places. You can find everything else.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, so we'll have those links down in the show notes below, everybody. And follow Cullen, because I'm sure there's like 3 or 4 books we didn't talk about.
There's more, and look, I'm gonna be, knock on wood, there's gonna be plenty more coming out in the next I'm always looking like in 18 months what's coming in the next 18 months. There's plenty of stuff coming out. So
awesome.
Good. That gives me an excuse to email you again in a few months to come back on.
Yep.
So everybody make sure to follow Cullen and check out those links. And thanks so much for being on. And hopefully we get to talk to you again soon, man.
Yeah, hope so. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.